it is directly applicable, and this direct applicability then allows the laity to expect the money from the state. So the state was in breach, and then the state had to alter national budgetary legislation very fast in order to compensate the laity. But this is the most telling example on how a regulation can be not directly effective. It depends on something, but at the same time directly applicable. So she could rely on the regulation in general, but she could not rely on the regulation in the precise terms in order to determine the budget line in the member state and actually claim the money. So the member state needed to do something else. But when the member state needs to do something else, it doesn't mean that the member state transposes. The member state simply adopts the instruments that facilitate the functioning of the regulation. With the directives, it's different. So regulations, in the majority of cases, if the provision is clear, precise, and conditional, have direct effect. The question is, can directives have direct effect? And this is an issue which is fundamental for the human rights cases which we will probably be discussing. Because the majority of human rights instruments and non-discrimination instruments in the European community are directives. Directives are not regulations, right? So they need to be transposed into national law. What if they are not transposed? Can you then rely on those instruments and as an individual in order to claim your rights or not?
No, we can't. Based on that picture that you joined last, it's not possible. You always complain to your national law. You don't have direct contact with the community law.
That's right, based on the picture, on the definition of directive. But there is case law on this. And the court explained exactly how it should work. So first of all, every directive provides an implementation deadline. So if a directive is passed in 2003, for example, it will say from the 1st of January 2006, the directive should be transposed into national law, and thus the deadline expires in 2006. So usually the member states are given several years in order to implement the directives into national law. As long as the deadline has not expired, it is presumed that the member states are starting the case and are not in breach. So you cannot rely on the directive directly as long as the member state still has some time. Then this picture applies, the general picture. But once the deadline is passed, once the member state has not done anything, and there is no time granted to the member state left, there are some possibilities for direct effect of directives. Why? Because directives, although addressed at the member states, lose any kind of practical effect if we let the member states who didn't implement directives to face no consequences of their breach of community law. So basically, if directives grant some rights to individuals against the state, then obviously it's in the interests of the states not interested in adhering to those rights, not to implement the directive. So if the directive says, like, if the member state that doesn't hire female judges will have to pay compensation to all the candidates, and it's the policy of the member state never to have any lady sitting there at the bench, it means that in order to go on discriminating, the member state will simply not transpose the directive. The directive is not transposed. According to the picture which I drew, an individual who suffered discrimination will never have any possibility to go against the member state. Yes.
So it seems like that if the government is not interested, I mean, if it's the threat right here to implement this new legislation of the community, so it will postpone it until the deadline, right?
Yeah. The majority of directives are postponed like this, exactly.
Yeah. So, in fact, the citizen of this member state who suffers from non-implementing of this legislation cannot go to the Court of Justice and ask for the implementation of this law because it's not applicable yet, right? So the thing is that
the citizen cannot do anything before the deadline.
Yeah. So
but after the deadline, we will speak about it.
So in fact, until the deadline, if it's for example like 5-7 years is given,
it's never so long.
Okay, even 3 years. So everything the citizen can do is only to sit and wait.
Yes, but it's like this with national laws as well. National laws do not always come into effect on the date of publication.
Yeah,
sometimes there is a delay.
That's true, but with community law it goes a bit different way because when they work out the new law, they announce it publicly, like yes, there was this law, blah blah blah, and now there will be 3 years for each government to implement. For a citizen, like for average citizen, he doesn't hear this 3 years. He hears that the community has overworked this law. So actually, the citizen, the average person who is a citizen of the member country, is the one who suffers.
No, actually, because when we speak about the directive, we say the member states are bound within the deadline, blah blah blah, to implement to create legislation in this or those fields. Because the directive provides us with a goal. You think, well, I have 2 fences, they're identical. So presumably for you as an individual, it's an identical legal situation. In practice, for the court, it won't be an identical situation, because if you go to the judge and you say that elderly man didn't paint the fence white, although the directives provide me with the right to have all my fences painted white, because the neighbors have to paint the fence. And the judge will tell you, but the directive is binding on the member state. So if we oblige that elderly person to paint the fence, it means that that elderly person will suffer the consequences of the breach of the member state. So the member state didn't comply with community law, and instead of asking the member state to comply and pushing the member state to comply, we make some elderly men suffer. The directive is not addressed to that elderly man. So it will be, for example, a situation where there is no possibility to have direct effect of directives. Because in community law, the rights of all individuals are the same. So we cannot derive any rights against other persons not related to the state based on the fact that the state is in breach of community law.
But if this situation occurs with the horizontal case, and the judge says that it's impossible to give a decision on this situation because it's not applicable through the member state, so that's the fault of the member state.
And I will speak about the situation. Not everything is lost.
Yeah, because it will go into vertical case, right?
No, because it's well, it will.
But like
first, let's keep this distinction. So, in the vertical situations, direct effect of directives is possible. In the horizontal situations, not involving the member states, direct